Hey, everybody. So this week I have finally secured a guest for my show here. We're going to have a little chat about some stuff that I think you guys are going to find pretty interesting. I have long wanted to do a video with Tory Chrisman, or as some people know her, Tory Magoo. And so I've got her here with us. Now, Tory is old school. She came out of Scientology back in like 1999, 2000 time period. And she has been an active vocal critic ever since. She has been amazing. And when I talk about having done the work that I do by stepping on the shoulders of giants who have come before me, she's actually one of the people I'm talking about. So so welcome, Tory.
Thank you.
Yeah, so let's do a little chat here. Now, what I wanted to talk about is we have been seeing over the last, I don't know, I'm not trying to be specific or super precise here, but I've noticed since season 2 of Leah's show coming out that there has been more blow-ups, kind of, nitpicky, fighty things, and not just, disagreements that people have, because people are going to disagree all the time. But in the critic world, I am noticing blow-ups, actual explosions, and this has caused rifts that have created separations in Facebook groups, unfriending each other. I have fallen into this myself, so I am not, the objective observer here, and it was actually my own, running into this smack head on about a week ago that I just went, okay, this has gone too far. There's too much going on here. Something's wrong, and I thought, you're the perfect person to talk to about this. So let's go ahead and talk about OSA, the Office of Special Affairs, which is the arm of the Church of Scientology that is engaged in public relations work, legal work, and the dirty, fair gaming work that gets done in order to trash critics and create dissension and create problems with Scientology critics.
All right, so let me just say a couple of things first.
Yes.
Before you start.
Yes.
Number one, for people that don't know me at all, which there's new people coming on and getting interested in this because of Leah and just because of many, many critics around the world that are speaking out and exposing the abuses of the Church of Scientology, more and more people are brand new to this. So I may be just another person, and I am just another person. That's really who I am. I'm just another person here in my bedroom. That's it. That's what I've been doing. I've made 800 videos. I have a YouTube site myself, Tory Magoo 44. That's it.
Yep.
But anyway, point being, I got in Scientology in 1969. I was a true believer. I totally was in it for 30 years. I mean, I swore that they didn't do this stuff that Chris just said, the nasty stuff. They told me the Office of Special Affairs was the replacement of the old Guardian's office where 11 Scientologists went to prison, right?
That's right.
Because they were doing such bad things. And you can Google that and find out about that. But the point is, then they started the Office of Special Affairs, said this is just PR and legal. That's all we're doing. So I worked with them in the PR end. So anyway, I was in it for 30 years. I woke up in July of 2000 because of the stuff I was doing that I'm going to tell you about today. That helped me wake up. And it was a choice of dig your head in the sand more or, leave. That was it. Those are the only two choices. You can't, like Tom Cruise says, you're either in or you're out. L. Ron Hubbard said, you're either in or you're out. You know what I mean? David Miscavige, they're very big on that because they have to keep that black and white thinking going. But if you wake up, you're sort of like, well, wait a minute here. My thought was I didn't get into Scientology to stop free speech. I didn't. And that's what I found out they were doing. So we're going to tell you about it. But the point is I was in it for 30 years. Scientology's like a triangle. I got up to next to the top. I was on it for 7 years. It didn't work. And I finally woke up because of the stuff I'm going to tell you and escaped out. I lost all my friends overnight. And my husband of 27 years. And a couple other qualifications. I was in the Sea Org for 6 months. They kicked me out because I have epilepsy, and they said I couldn't take my medication. My mother saved my life, got me back on the medication, but I never got back on the Sea Org. But I worked next to the Sea Org for years as a volunteer. And this was all volunteer work that I'm going to tell you about. I wasn't staff. I was a volunteer.
Right.
But I was second to the top. as far as their triangle. So they trusted me a lot. And I think they sure, everyone thought I was a total true believer. I stood up in court and said, what I'm going to tell you about is not true. It never happened. It's a lie, right? I really believed it until they canceled my van to go to the airport to escape out. That's when I went, oh my God, maybe these critics are telling the truth. So anyway, that's sort of I'm a trained auditor. I'm OT7. I've done a lot of stuff in Scientology, and that's why I wasn't, just one last thing, I wasn't going to speak out. I wasn't going to picket. I wasn't going to make videos. And I even called the lady who was helping me and said, I'm leaving under the radar. But what they do, just what they're doing with Leah, they did with me. They just keep picking on you so much. After a while, you just realize, wait a minute, I have free speech too, and maybe I have something to say. And I started talking, and that's the rest. Thus, I've made many, many posts, and then when YouTube came out, started that, and there you go. So
Yeah.
let's go.
Awesome, and thank you for breaking all that down. I actually forgot you did a little stint in the Sea Org, so I'm glad you went over all that.
Yeah.
Now, the part we're going to focus on today, because obviously we could talk for hours about all of your experiences with all this stuff, right? And 800 videos is nothing to blink at. I mean, that's a lot of work you've put into talking about this subject. So we're gonna narrow in on this business of OSA influence behind the scenes, okay? Yep. And because this is something you actually had. The reason I grabbed you up to talk about this is because with you talking about this, it's not conjecture. You saw it. You actually were in the same room.
I didn't just see it. I did it.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't. First thing that I want to make clear to everyone, because anyone watching is most people are on the net all the time. You have to remember in the 90s, none of us were on the internet. None. I mean, maybe some people watching this are like, well, I was on the internet, but really almost very few people were. So the life that we all lead now today on our cell phones and talking to each other and Facebook and everything else was not around. YouTube was not around.
That's right.
Okay, they had Scientology. The ex-Scientologists had started one little group called Alt Religion Scientology, and they had left Scientology and they were speaking out. And Scientology had a nuclear attack on it. So let's go from there.
Exactly. Good. So and that's also the alt religion Scientology. That was a Usenet forum or something, and that was
it was like just one post after another.
Right. It was there was no.
That's a key issue for people to know because it wasn't discussion like it is. You could pull up a topic and make an answer to it, but their goal was to drive, somebody would make a hot topic, L. Ron Hubbard's a liar, and their goal was to get it driven down the page and off the page, because their view was nobody reads the second page, which isn't altogether wrong, right? A lot of us don't read that much. Do you know what I mean? So that was their goal.
Exactly. So, okay, good. And it's my assertion in talking about all of this that, so everything you're describing here, I'm going to say is still going on.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And that's the point of this, right? We're not talking about history here. We're going to talk about...
No, I just wanted to compare it so that they understand, because people would be like, why didn't you just look on the net? It's like there wasn't a net.
Exactly.
You couldn't look on the net.
Exactly. So, but I just want to be clear about the fact that that we're not having a discussion about stuff that happened 20 years ago and isn't relevant now, as though this is a historical thing, right? The methods here, maybe the message boards aren't the same, social media has advanced and evolved, but the methods and the techniques that are used back then are still in use today. So,
100%.
Exactly. So why don't you describe what you actually saw and participated in? Sorry, that was the word I was struggling to find. With Bill Yadi and the accounts and all that stuff.
Okay, so first of all, who's Bill Yadi? Right. Bill Yadi was my auditor and best friend back in the 90s, in the mid-90s. And the critics had gotten bigger and bigger on this alt-religion Scientology news group. So Bill came to me knowing that I wouldn't do anything for OSA, really, like this. But they knew because he was my auditor, which is like a counselor. And I had said, look, whatever, You could tell me anything and I'll do it. I trust my life with you. I had told him that in session. So they knew we can use her, right? So he came to me and he said, look, we've got to do something and it's top secret. You can't tell anyone. And we need you to just open up an account. I didn't even know what an account was. I didn't know what the internet was. I had no idea. He said, we think you can do it, Tory. And this is what they always do. This is how they manipulate people. It's like, you're the only one that can do it. So, okay, he wanted me to just get an email and a password. And I did. I got it opened up, came back, and he had a grin about as big as the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? It was just like ear to ear, so happy. And I said, what? And he said, you have just changed the face of the internet forever. And I said, how can I change the face of the internet when I don't even know what it is? Okay, so long story short, roll forward. Then they got me opening up more and more accounts. I said, what are you doing with these accounts? He said, I'm not going to tell you, because if I tell you, these critics are really evil and they'll get you in deposition and you don't want that. And I said, no, I don't. And he said, okay, so I just won't tell you. And then you can just say, I don't know. So I opened up 10 accounts and Bill used those 10 accounts every day. He would do it every early morning until around noon. Then he was over at one of their missions working as an auditor and what they call a case supervisor. And then in the evening, he would be back on the internet and all weekend running these 10 identities, which I believe then he started pulling in more people that were high up on this triangle. So they were trustworthy, right? And it was only about, it was a real clandestine group of maybe 5, maybe 10 at the most people, right? And they were doing all this stuff on the internet. I was not. People think I posted on the internet. I didn't. I opened those accounts. I didn't know what they were doing. It got weirder and weirder. And so that he was running these 10 identities. And let me just explain a little bit about that. Let's say here's 10 identities. 3 of them he had would be very obviously the Office of Special Affairs, sort of like, just doing things that people could go, well, that's OSA.
Right.
We know OSA. We can see him. Right. And he was wanting people to think they knew OSA. But then with the other 7, he was doing very covert things with people, which I believe they're still doing. One of the biggest ones, the goals of this clandestine group, which he told me right towards the end when I finally woke up and was about ready to leave. Right before that, he told me, okay, number 1 is to distract off of the topics. That's what we're doing it for. Because if someone's talking about LRH, the church, anything like that, get it off of it. I don't care if you're talking about football, baseball, your mother, anything, get it off of the topic, right? That's number 1. Number 2 is degrade any active critics, including Chris Shelton, myself, Karen De La Care, Andreas, just anyone, Tony Ortega, anyone who is speaking out in public, start putting him down. And they can do it very slowly and very covertly so that you're positive, no, this person is really a horrible person. And it's like what I try to do. The third goal, just so you know, is to just slime the area so that people go, I don't even want to post here anymore. I'm so sick of the arguing, the fighting, the infighting. And remember, they've been stirring this pot for months and months and months. I sat with Bill Yadi. This is a true story, and then I'll shut up. I sat with him. He was on one of these things, and he's typing away. And again, I'm like, duh, I don't know anything about what he's doing. And all of a sudden, he goes like this, bingo, that's it. And he stands up, and he lights a cigarette. And I said, bingo what? And he goes, I've been trying to get these guys, I've been posting this one theme, right? And all of a sudden, a real critic took up my theme and is now arguing with all the other real critics and ex-Scientologists about my topic that I've been posting for weeks, right? He finally, with his 10 different identities, playing different people, finally got them to take it. And he goes, let's go to dinner. They'll be arguing for days, weeks, maybe months. Let's just go get dinner.
Yep, exactly. Precisely. And and to think that sort of thing doesn't go on now, right, is just naive.
Now, one thing that both Chris and I have already talked about, and it's totally true, we both are for real communication, and we're for people disagreeing. There's no problem with that. It isn't like you can't ever disagree. That's not what we're talking about.
That's
We're
right.
talking about clusterfucks where people are just, and pardon me for my language, but where people are really just snarled up, and it's like, wait, weren't you friends with them yesterday, and
That's
or
right.
didn't they interview you last month and you guys were all great, and now you're like, and everyone's at everything, and it's not people just disagreeing. It's not just the topic of I think this, you think that, let's keep talking, or I disagree with you, or even I'm mad at you. It's not that. It's a huge snarl up. That's when that's programmed, that's planned.
Exactly. And something else to talk about here. I actually, after we spoke last night, I talked to Jesse Prince. And great guy, another old school guy,
Right.
amazing experience. He was at the very, very top of Scientology's organizing board at RTC back in the 80s. He really went through the ringer, with his
He
own
really talked
experiences.
about standing on the arms of a giant. Jesse,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Helped me a ton.
Yeah, and he reminded me that everything OSA does is on a program, and those
Right.
programs can be extensive. And let's define this, because this video is meant for those of you out there who are not familiar with all of this, have not been around for years, are new to this, have watched Leah's show, have joined some Facebook groups, or have gotten involved on social media, and you see some of these explosions happen, and you go, my God, what the hell is going on? Why are these guys at each other's throats? Well, I want to point out that it is in the best interest of one group only for us to be at each other's throats, and that group is the Office of Special Affairs, which is the Church of Scientology. And we know that they are real. It is not some vague, weird conspiracy. We know that they go to work all day, every day. And we know that they write programs. I mean, Tory's seen her program about her. Right? They come up with these targets, these programs, which are a series of steps that they're going to get done that have a very specific strategic end result for Scientology to either destroy its critics and enemies, or to increase its own public relations reputation, or preferably get both done at the same time.
Just to back that up, I have a 25-step program that they wrote on me that the goal of it was to muzzle Tory, and it was to get people to join my company and get me fired. It was to talk to every one of the media and black PR me so they wouldn't want to interview me, and basically just get it so that nobody wanted to talk to me.
Exactly. And you had the good fortune of actually being able to see the program that was written on you, because somebody got it out of there and showed it to you.
Right. Right.
I am quite positive that there are programs for all of us, and I'm quite sure that, especially Leah, but also all of us who have been on her show or who have spoken out and have been making noise. And those programs are not just make a hate website and move on. No. Right? You mentioned targets on your program to get people to join your company. This is real life stuff, not just social media activity, right? We know a guy, Mark Fisher, who had his best. It turns out, if I'm remembering the story right, he was for something like 3 or 5 years, his best friend was covertly working for the Church of Scientology and was reporting back to them on his activities on a daily basis. He had no clue. He had no idea.
None.
Right?
Yeah, they've done long programs. And just so anybody knows, because this may seem so weird, it's like you might go, I don't need to know this stuff. But you know what? You do, because this happens in life also. Yep. So these are good lessons. That's what I realized when I got out. I thought, God, I learned so much that I would have never known if I hadn't done this stuff. That's right. And it does go on in life in general, not all the time by any means, but when it does, boy, you talk to someone and they go, people are just attacking me all over the place, and you go, I know the game. You know what I mean? I know how it works.
That's right.
Bad news. And Yadi used to do things like he would have one guy that was really funny, and everybody liked him. He'd say their favorite critic is Mike Smith. Everyone loves Mike Smith, right?
Yep.
Then he had a guy that was sort of angry, had another guy that knew all the technology and could debate with people, just another person that was sort of had all kinds of knowledge on things. He had different identities. He always had someone that was like blind and deaf or whatever. So whenever you see that, you can't, whenever you can't, I always ask, has anybody met this person or talked to them on the phone? Now that they may have changed because I've exposed it for 17 years, but they used to, you could never, ever, ever talk to them. So that was a way to kind of smoke them out. Now I'm pretty sure they probably do have people that, you know, that are even talking.
Exactly, because a phone call is sort of is still a fairly easy and anonymous thing, but
Right.
you feel now you've made personal contact with this person, now you've talked to them, so they must be real and they must be legit.
Right.
And and it's so easy to cross the line into, outright paranoia with this, which is not the goal of what we're talking
Nothing.
about, at
Nothing.
all, right? I mean, your friends are your
No.
friends, and we're not asking you to distrust your friends. It's
No.
just, you really need to. The point is to just raise the awareness of the fact that these operations go on, and they are not benign, and and OSA is not completely toothless. And while we
No.
talk about how the Church of Scientology has a toxic reputation in the public, because it does,
It does.
that doesn't mean that they have given up, and it doesn't mean that they have stopped what they're doing, and it doesn't mean that they don't still follow L. Ron Hubbard's directions to the letter when it comes to this kind of activity,
Right.
right? And
And one of the easiest things to do, I don't mean to cut you off,
no, no,
but just don't forget it, that you can do is if you end up in one of these clustered screw ups, where there's just like tons of people against tons of people, just get out of it. Jesse had a great expression because I would call him up. I'd be so mad because they used to write lie after lie after lie about me. And I'd call him up and I'd go, Jesse, and he'd just hear me go, all right, listen to me carefully. Step away from the stove. And it's such a great expression. Just step away
yep,
because they need you fighting. They need us arguing. They need it. They need that.
that's
The
right.
only thing, Bill Yadi told me, the only thing we can't handle is if somebody won't answer. It doesn't matter what they answer. If we're talking about golf and they answer, that's good because that's keeping them in touch with me. And then I can switch over to this. And then pretty soon we're totally off Scientology. We're totally off anything to do with Hubbard or any of their abuses. And we're on to some big argument about nothing. Okay, then all you have to do is get back to Scientology and their abuses, and you're back on program. That's it. As far as, and I don't mean like we're running a program, but I mean, you're back doing something that's going to help other people, that raises awareness. That's a good thing. Whereas, me nitpicking about your ring and I don't like your ring. Why do you wear that stupid ring? It's like, who cares, really?
That's
You have
right.
to think, really, who am I possibly helping by arguing about this?
Exactly.
Or bring this person down. Let's say I don't like Chris Shelton, and I'm like, I don't like Chris Shelton, and it's like, okay, so what? What he's saying is very valuable stuff. It's like maybe you don't like me. A lot of people don't like me. Scientology was running so many programs against me for years because I spoke out in 2000. Just like Jesse, we were people that were attacked madly because there was no internet when we started. I mean, there was for me. I was the first person to post on the internet. Tory Crispin left the building, right? It was Magoo left the building. I think that's what I said. But I thought there were only 50 people on the internet. I really didn't have a clue how big it was. So it was one of those things where they just started attacking the shit out of me. And it was just unbelievable for me. It really was. It was really, really amazing. But thankfully now we do have the internet. People do have it everywhere. They do have access to both sides. And I just say to people all the time, you don't have to believe me. Just look at both sides and find out, make up your own mind. I tell them that. I tell people in Scientology, and I tell people out. Do the same because we know. And see, that's kind of checkmate, really, when you think about it, because every ex-Scientologist, every critic, every never-in, every anonymous, anybody that is in this game at all can say, look at both sides, make up your own mind. Because we know if people read both sides honestly, both sides, you're not gonna join. There's no way. If you really learn how abusive they are, and I'm not saying that Scientology itself doesn't have some good stuff, because it does. But when you balance it with, your life is in their hands. Once you join, once you're on the train, I call it the mind control train. And it's like you hop on just to do the communication course. But the truth is, it's like the Hotel California. You can check in, but you can't check out.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. All right. So I think we've made the point about sock accounts, what we call sock accounts, meaning, like a like a sock puppet.
Right.
And, then these operators, whether it's an OSA staff member, whether it's a private investigator that they've hired, whether it's a Scientology OT volunteer, and they go for OTs because because of all the Xenu stuff that's all over the internet, they can't have lower level Scientologists, doing this kind of work.
None of them, just so you know, it's a triangle, and Xenu only starts way up here.
Exactly.
So all the people below that don't know anything about it.
Exactly.
And they very zipped.
Yep.
So
precisely. So in addition to that technique or that method of taking critics out by creating infighting, by planting seeds over a long period of time. This is not a 1 week deal. These guys go on there and they're in for the long haul. And if they're mean to take somebody out, they're going to keep at it, and whether it takes months or even a year or 2 or 3 or whatever.
exactly.
So that's something to simply be aware of. It's impossible to be able to detect who all of these sock accounts are. That's not the point of this. The point of it is that this activity.
Remember one thing: all of the sock accounts were run by one person. Originally,
right.
There were 10 fake accounts I opened up.
Yep.
And Yadi ran them all. He was the one posting all of these different identities. So it can seem like a whole lot, but it's really a few people.
Exactly. They can get a lot of work done with a relatively small number of people, which is part of the genius of the operation.
Right.
Now, here's another thing I wanted to talk about, or just kind of throw out there and I think we talked about this briefly yesterday, Tory, which was something else I just became aware of, right? Which is that you can have people who are knowingly or unknowingly connected with the Church of Scientology or people in the Office of Special Affairs, and then they're sort of connected to others. It's sort of 1 or 2 or 3 degrees of separation. And okay, so like let's say you have Joe. Okay, Joe Joe ex-Scientologist, and he's a critic, and he's on the internet and he's talking about stuff. Well, he has a friend named Bill, and Bill is also an ex-Scientologist, but Bill is in touch with somebody from the Office of Special Affairs.
Right.
Right? And Bill feeds information to the Office of Special Affairs about Joe, and Joe has no clue. And Joe's telling Bill all kinds of stuff about himself because he trusts Bill. And Bill's unwittingly being a dupe for Scientology by feeding it back to them. I just the other day came across this exact scenario, and was able to warn the Joe in this scenario, right, about this, and he was able to take care of it. So it's not always a direct one-on-one connection, is my point. There can be degrees of separation that can also adversely affect critics without them even knowing about it, or people who are supporters, right, in these Facebook groups and stuff. So that's also just something to know, be aware of. Watch out for warning signs or indications of this kind of activity, because we found out about it because the middleman, actually, the guy was so naive. He goes, well, yeah, I know this person who's in the Church of Scientology, but he's my friend. He would never, ever use the information I give him against anyone I know. We're all just friends here, right? And you just go, oh my God, can somebody really be that naive? Well, it turns out they can. So
yeah, it's tricky because truthfully, someone told me this when I left. How can you tell if a Scientologist is lying? And they said if their lips are moving. And I know that sounds like a huge generality, but you know what? It's pretty true. Because the second you get on that mind control train, you're sort of taught it's us against them.
That's right.
That's it. There's no other shades of gray. It's us against them. So either you're in, that's why I call it the Scientology Truman Show. If you haven't watched that movie, watch it, The Truman Show. It's very much like Scientology, where you cannot see the walls when you're in it. You can't watch TV. What we're talking about right now, they won't see. They can't listen to it. Now, more and more people are, just like that's how I met Andreas in Norway. There was a little blue link, And I thought, well, I better thank him for helping me. So I clicked on it, thanked him, and thus we got in communication. But the point, so I think that's why the internet is their Vietnam, because they're not going to get rid of it. They thought they were going to, opening these phony accounts, but all that they did with that is create more critics. That's all. That's
That's
the
right.
main thing they did. And the other thing is they made a main line to the N theta. See, it was kind of hard to get to ARS in the old days. It was like over the river and through the woods and under here and click on this and there they are, right?
That's right.
And whereas now it's like, bam, they're everywhere. You can
Exactly.
find all
Exactly.
the information all over the internet. Thank goodness. And thank you to every single person. I say it all the time. Every voice counts. And every person saying something, whether you're someone with 800 videos like me, or thousands of videos, or Andreas with his huge site, or Chris with all of his stuff, or you're someone that's just saying something every few days, it all matters. Every single person counts. It really does. And most of us are speaking out about the abuses of the Church of Scientology. And I just want to name those. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
The key ones that I speak out about are breaking up of families, which they do. They declare someone suppressive, and thus no one's allowed to talk to them. That's how I lost all my friends and my husband of 27 years. Okay, so there's that. Declaring someone suppressive is very abusive. They stop free speech, which is what we're talking about. And that's how I woke up. I realized I didn't get into Scientology to stop free speech. And they attacked me. And that's really when I left. Okay, so then roping in young kids and anybody to a billion-year contract. That's a fraudulent contract. Is that fraud where they sell you stuff? It's a total business. It's not a religion, just so you know.
That's right.
It is 100% a business where you have to pay every single step of the way. Or join staff and give them your life, and that's equally as bad or worse. So both of them, all of those, and medical abuse, which I speak out for all the time because they made me get off my medicine for epilepsy. I had tons of grand mal seizures, and had my mother not intervened and saved my life and made me get on my medicine. And she said, believe me, if you're not on your medicine today and your doctor calls me today and says you're on your medicine, I will be flying out there. And believe me, L. Ron Hubbard and the Church of Scientology will never forget your mother. So it's important to me that anyone, if you're listening to this and you do have a medical condition, number one, do not join Scientology. Okay, if you're in Scientology, get a non-Scientology doctor to treat you. Period. That's all I have to say.
Cool. Okay, cool. And okay, good. So then, I guess I just wanted to wrap this up by, well, we've made our points about, how some of the ways that online OSA can get in there and can stir the pot and can mess things up. Now, I guess I'll just.
They can be saying things, let's say they're talking to someone. It's like just spreading little digs here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And when you hear a dig, note it for what it is. That's a dig. It's not something good. You know what I mean?
That's right. That was perfect, because I wanted to just give a little bit of something as to, well, how can you detect this kind of thing? Everybody's got opinions. The internet can sometimes be the sewer of human emotion and nonsense. So it's a little hard sometimes. But when we're all on the same page, literally, like in the supporters page or something for fans of Leah Remini's show, right? We're all there because we were drawn there because we have this common cause or this common idea, right? And so fine, we're not all going to necessarily agree with each other about everything when it comes to how to take on Scientology, what to do about some of the abuses, some of personality quirks people have, and that sort of thing. And that's all fine. But when you see a blow up where it seems to be irreconcilable, where it seems to be that it's just beyond repair and it's just insane, and people on both ends are so sure that they are so justified, that they are so right. Well, before that blow up, they were on the same page, they were moving in the same direction, and now suddenly they're not. I'm sorry, but historically speaking, and with what we've talked about and with what we know, it bears a second look on the part of everyone involved to maybe, just maybe, try to come back together and maybe work it out, preferably in private before, not publicly,
Yes, that's
Sort
a
it
good
out.
point. And I ask everyone, because someone just disconnected from me, who I thought was a very dear friend of mine, and just unfriended me. Thankfully, one of my dear friends called me and let me know what was going on. So at least I could understand. But at least have the dignity to call the person. If you're going to unfriend them, hear their side of it. Because
Exactly.
99% of the time, if you hear their side and you guys talk on the phone, not just texting, but call them. I know it's an unusual old school thing to pick up a phone, but you know what? When you hear someone's voice, there's intonation that you can hear that you cannot hear on a text. And so many things get misduplicated or misunderstood or just taken wrong when it's in writing.
That's
That
right.
if you say, and you go, wait a minute, I didn't say that. That isn't what I said. You thought I said this? Oranges? No, I'm talking about apples. And they're like, oh, I thought you were talking about oranges. And I mean, it can be that simple.
That's
But
right.
it's very, very important that you do. And the other thing, that there's two things that all of us need to practice that the Scientology never does. Number one is the ability to say, you know what, I was wrong, I'm sorry. Okay. And number two is to say, I forgive you. Let's, if we all just practice, I'm sorry, I was wrong, and I forgive you, let's move on, let's come back together. You know what I mean? We are wonderful people. I just got goosebumps just saying that, because it's such a healing thing. You know what I mean? It's so healthy versus fighting, which is so negative. I mean, you just think about when you get in these big arguments and you break up with someone. I mean, are you feeling better or worse? That's
Right.
my monitor. Am I better or worse? If I'm worse, I don't need to hang around with that person that much longer. Now, if I'm not going to hang around with them, the least I can do is call them up and say, you know what, I'm not going to hang around with you anymore, because every time I do, I feel crummy. And then they can go, I am being really crummy. I didn't mean to be. That happened to me one time at a school. I was working at a school, and this lady was always giving me these dirty looks. And so I wrote her a letter and I said, you know what, you are an embarrassment to New Yorkers, because New Yorkers, at least they'll come up and say, I hate your guts. You know what I mean? I said, at least come tell me. She took me out to lunch, and oh my God, I had no idea I was doing that. So remember, that happens too.
Exactly, exactly. And I'm sure we're going to get all kinds of responses to this. And people can get really riled up and they can feel very justified in their upset. But, I just want to encourage people to just, try to get along, try to get over the upset, try to come back around in a couple days when things have
Yeah.
calmed down a little bit, and try to maybe build those bridges back up again that we're so eager to burn down sometimes.
Yeah. I
That's
think it's
all,
a very important.
and I just wanted to contribute that message to the fray here. So Tori, thank you very much for doing this and
Thank
for,
you, Chris.
sharing your experiences here. I'm sure we'll also, probably both of us will get tons of questions on this. We'll be happy to answer them, right? And there's so much more to talk about when it comes to the Office of Special Affairs and their tactics and the way they go about doing things. And I hope eventually to actually do a whole series on those guys, because there's quite a bit
And
to know.
the other thing, just so people know, is that every account I opened, I had to use like a phone card, so they couldn't trace it to Scientology,
Yep.
and I had to use a money order to pay for it. That's how they get away with this shit. They're very covert. You have to know that. They're very, very covert.
Yes, they definitely, and they've learned a lot in the last 17 years. They are definitely, not going to be easy to, to unmask, right? And that's
But the good thing is, I always say, they will prove why we do what we do. So they can
right.
they can get everybody fighting. It doesn't matter. We're going to persist. A
Oh
bunch of
yeah.
us are going to
Oh
persist.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
the way it is.
Yeah.
So
None,
we're going to win out either way. But
yeah, none of this fighting
I,
has in any way discouraged me from doing what I'm doing.
no.
I just want to get along with people, and it always bothers me when I react to other people, when other people react to me negatively, and when I see friends fighting, and I just hate it. I really hate it. So I wanted to do something about that. So all right, so Tori, thanks a lot, and thanks everybody for coming around and watching this, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.
All right. Bye bye.